Hey, what up, losers? Today, coming at you with a super bold and controversial statement that will shatter the very core of your moral understanding. I think that grave robbing is wrong. Yes, thank you so much, everybody. Yes, I know, I'm so brave, Okay. Let me explain. Kingdom Come Deliverance is the absolute shit. No, not that kind of shit. This kind of shit. This is by far the best real-world medieval RPG ever made. It captures the time period so incredibly well, and it's the game that my 8-year-old self would have played to absolute death. However, my adult self played this game in a pretty unusual way that I doubt many of you even considered a possibility. I didn't even go into it intending to play it any differently to how I play, say, Skyrim or The Witcher 3, which are both very similar games. But what caused this change is by far one of the best parts of the game, which is of course our boy, Henry of Skalitz. This is the story of how a tightly written main character and one single in-game conversation made me think twice about every action I took in this wonderful Bohemian adventure. Also be warned, this video will contain spoilers. Starting the game off, I went about it pretty much how I would any game. Whenever I'm given the choice in how my character acts, I will usually choose a good-natured person, at least on my first playthrough, as that's usually what the most canon option is. So I did some combat training, got into a fight, flung some poop at a guy's house, the usual stuff I get up to on a Sunday morning. Then the village gets attacked, my parents get killed, and Henry barely escapes with his life. But it was the return to Skalitz where my playthrough completely changed forever. On the way up to the village, you get attacked by a bandit in the process of looting the bodies of your former neighbours, and this is your real first taste of combat in this game. I dispatched him pretty easily and looted some of his armour, like I've done in dozens of games before this. Further up the road, there's another bandit, and once again, fight, kill, loot. Then in the ruins of the town, you meet this guy whose name I'm not even going to try and pronounce. And it's this dialogue option here that would turn my playthrough completely upside down. If I had chosen either of the other two, the next 90 plus hours of this game could have been wildly different. Picking this dialogue option, Henry accuses the guy of looting the dead bodies, to which he throws it back at you, accusing you of doing the exact same thing. This sent my mind into a role-playing brainstorm. Because, yes, Henry has just said that he doesn't approve of picking through the things of dead people. And notice how he doesn't specify that he's talking about civilians. He just blankly says that this guy shouldn't be looting any kind of corpse. So if I'm playing as this character of Henry, why, when I'm in control of him, would he then break his own rules and go on a massive corpse looting spree across the land? This thought then stuck in my mind, and the next time I killed an enemy, I didn't take any of his armor off him, even if it would have massively benefited me, as Henry was so under-equipped. I thought, that's just not Henry, or at least my version of Henry. And get ready folks, it's time for the phrase you hear in literally every single video essay about gaming. Narrative dissonance! For those of you who haven't been exposed to 14 billion YouTube essays about this, ludonarrative dissonance is a term used to describe when the actions of your main character in a video game vary wildly between the scripted cutscenes and then the hands-on gameplay. For example, it would be pretty jarring if you were playing Batman Arkham Origins and Batman says in a cutscene that he doesn't kill people, but then directly after that you take him out into Gotham and start mowing people down with a machine gun. Wouldn't that be a complete and utter betrayal of the character and all his values? Having moments like this can really ruin your immersion, as you don't feel as connected to the main character, who can start to feel less like a real person and more like a collection of disconnected dialogue options. After hearing this conversation with Henry, it would have completely ruined any connection I had with him to then go completely against his established morals and start yeeting all the possessions from every corpse I could find. After them being freed into the open world, I vowed to play the rest of the game according to what I thought the established character of Henry would do, making sure to listen carefully to everything he said and keep a mental note of my rules. A self-imposed system like this is much easier to follow in a game like Kingdom Come Deliverance that is set in our own real world, because I'm not relying on a bunch of brand new rules made up by a writer for a fictitious world. This is our own history, and the fact that the game includes a large codex full of entries about different laws and customs of the time is also a massive help. Okay, let's get down to the meat of it and go over all my self-imposed rules for Henry throughout my playthrough of Kingdom Come Deliverance. Rule number 1. No stealing from corpses. This one I bent slightly to allow me to take things like money and valuables of enemies I killed, with my reasoning being that it would be pretty quick for Henry to just grab a coin purse off a bandit, however actually stripping a corpse of his bloodied armor would be a bit too much for him. This actually made the equipment progression really much more interesting, as I had to get everything through the quests or earning enough money to buy it. No looting of any dead civilians however still stood. Rule number 2. No attacking of any innocent civilians or anybody not an active threat to Henry. This is the kind of rule that I would usually follow when doing a good character run. In the case of this particular game, it also means I would always show mercy to enemies who surrender, by allowing them to leave, albeit without their weapon. It's actually possible to complete the entire game without killing anybody, save for one boss in the middle of the game, so a more peaceful Henry was definitely considered as a player option by the devs. Rule number 3. No stealing from innocent people. This I imagine is a pretty common rule that most people who play a good Henry will follow. I settled on this right after you gain access to the open world, and you get a quest to do a robbery to pay back the guy who took care of you. My Henry just straight up refused to do this, and sought to resolve this by earning the money in a more legal way. This rule meant no stealing items or pickpocketing from normal people, no matter how much Henry disliked them. This even extended to not taking anything that could be considered immoral. For example, throughout the world you can find and buy these different treasure maps that lead you to various different item containers full of loot. Some of them are buried treasure, which I was fine with taking, however others are locked chests out in the woods, which are clearly someone's belongings, so it would generally be a case-by-case basis on whether I took it or not. Sometimes this rule did get annoying, as it did lock off entire quests like reforging the Sword of Sheba, which requires you to steal the majority of the pieces. I wish quests like this gave me multiple solutions, some of which could be completed without thievery. One of my favourite little details when it comes to pickpocketing is that Henry doesn't even get the option to try it unless you get asked to get trained in it, meaning a Henry who has no interest in it doesn't even see the option when looking at NPCs. I have no idea if this is intentional or not, but it's a fun little bit of headcanon that a good Henry isn't even considering pickpocketing as an option. Rule number 4. No grave robbing. Throughout the game you can find random graves that contain loot that you're able to dig up. This rule didn't actually start off me till around halfway through the game, however I'll tell you that story in a little bit. Rule number 5. No cheating at dice. Kingdom Come has its own minigame called Farkle, which rivals Gwent for levels of addiction. It's basically a dice game where you get points for throwing 1s and 5s and gamble your points for more throws. It's not the simplest game in the world, but unlike the one from Pirates of the Caribbean, it doesn't require a 20-minute YouTube video just to understand it. Seriously, I remember playing the multiplayer DS version of Dead Man's Chest and having absolutely zero clue what the fuck was going on. Why did they make such a complicated game for a 5-minute scene in the middle of this film that nobody ever understood when they could have just been playing pissing Yahtzee? Oh yeah, Farkle. Basically, you can find and buy different dice throughout the world, which will give you an advantage in the game. However, this is explicitly labelled as cheating. There's no penalty for it, and plenty of the other players in the game world use their own dodgy dice. But no, my Henry is an honourable knight, and will not stoop to such levels as cheating at dice. So I refuse to use these and want every single game fair and square. Yes, I also lost a lot of games because of this, but shut up. Rule number 6. No poaching. This is basically a built-in mechanic to the game anyway, that it's illegal to hunt wild animals. This didn't really matter to me as I had no desire to anyway, but it gets a mention because there are multiple instances of Henry refusing to poach for people and calling them criminals. Rule number 7. I also had some lesser role-playing rules, which weren't really dependent on Henry himself, but more just a fun way to immerse myself in the world. One of these is to always close doors behind me. This can be done especially easy in this game, because 1, there are no door loading screens, so every door can be open and closed, about a 30-second loading screen. Bethesda. And 2, because it has a proper animation of Henry reaching out and closing it, so it feels a lot more real. This was just a really fun way of interacting with the world, because naturally, Henry would close doors behind him. It's also very possible that I saw it in a NerdCube video like 7 years ago and it just stuck deep in my brain. And another one of these lesser rules would be to take my headgear off when stopping off at a settlement. This only became a thing for me around 2/3 of the way through the game, once I got a helmet with a visor, as I didn't like not seeing Henry's face in dialogue, and realistically, he wouldn't wear his helmet 24/7, so this was just a fun little role-playing thing. Although the amount of times I would leave town again and forget to put it back on is embarrassing. I mean, poor Henry in this massive suit of armor getting killed by my ADHD. By the way, I just did a video on gaming with ADHD, which you can check out here. Having all of these rules and restrictions was honestly such a fun way to play. However, one of the most interesting aspects was testing both mine and Henry's morals, and seeing where we would bend on our rules. For example, I laid out how we said absolutely no stealing of any kind. However, when it came to the Next to Godliness quest, where you and your friend Hans have a dumb drunk night together, and you request that you retrieve some of Sir Hanish's wine from the cellar, it became pretty easy to bend my rules here, as Henry doing a dumb drunk stunt that wasn't really even stealing as Hans gave him the key. This also came up in the quest A Needle in a Haystack, where you infiltrate a monastery to find someone in disguise. This is a main mission that requires you to engage in thievery, and whilst I would have preferred a different option, I can still mentally justify it as Henry doing it for the greater good, as he's trying to take down a murderous group of bandits. Similarly, is it okay to sneak in and to steal from and sabotage your enemies, such as in the quest Nest of Vipers? Obviously, these are your enemies, But is that really what an honourable knight would do? This process also gave us some interesting moral questions. Poaching is illegal, and we said we wouldn't do it. But what about when the refugees from our village are starving and ask us to hunt for food for them? Would Henry bend his morals for them? It's moments like this that make this method of play so damn interesting, and I don't think it would work as well in just any game, because they don't have such a well-made main character like Henry. Henry himself is such a massive part of why this playstyle, and also why this game is so brilliantly enjoyable. Unlike in other games where you make your own character but they still kind of feel wishy-washy and not like a real person, Henry is a distinct person with his own values and personality. At the start of the game, he's a somewhat naive but well-meaning young man who has desires beyond his small village. However, the death of his parents and the destruction of his home really does affect him, and he spends the rest of the game on both a path of revenge and also guilt that he couldn't save them. This is also helped by an excellent performance by Tom McKay. One of the best parts about this character is that if you do decide to play him as a thieving murderer, it can still kind of work. Looking back to the conversation that started this whole thing, I chose to have Henry condemn corpse robbing. However, if I had picked the other option where he says that the other guy's right, I could have gone down a whole different path of Henry having his morals corrupted and trying to justify all the awful things he's doing. Like robbing people to pay back his debt, or doing more things for the greater good. If Henry was a silent character, or the game had let you create your own, I almost definitely wouldn't have roleplayed this much. But because of how real he feels, I decided that this was not my story, it was ours. Before I leave you today, let me give you one last example, which was the entire inspiration behind this video. As I was casually playing, I decided to use one of the treasure maps I'd bought to go find some loot. Treasure map 17 to be more specific. Coming around to the back of a small house, I found the place where the treasure was, indicated by a dig hole spot on the ground. So naturally I began to dig. However, to my horror, there was a skeleton inside this hole. This wasn't just some random treasure. This was a grave. I had a look at the items in it, grabbed what I wanted, and went to leave. However, something stopped me. This weird nagging feeling that something was wrong. And that's when the thoughts started running in my head. Would Henry do this? Would my Henry do this? This is clearly a grave that has been dug by someone who lives in this house. Possibly a family member, possibly a lover. Whoever they were clearly important enough to be granted this dignity. Would my honourable knight desecrate the grave of some random person just for some money? No. No, he wouldn't. In real life, he wouldn't go digging around a cemetery just because someone sold you a treasure map for it. So, I reloaded my save. I undid this cruel deed, despite the fact that it had some good loot in it, because preserving who I saw Henry as was far more important. This was one of the most profound moments I've ever had in any video game, and it was entirely driven by my own choices and actions. No big text box flashed on screen telling me I was losing karma points or I was going against Henry's morality. It was simply my desire to stay true to the main character's morals, and keep him as alive in my head as possible. If you haven't played Kingdom Come Deliverance yet, it's truly a special game. Jesus Christ be praised, and thank you for watching today's video. I had a pretty strict time limit to make this one because I'm going on a holiday in like a week, so I picked a more small topic that I could cover more easily. If you enjoyed today's video, then I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. When I come back from holiday, I'm going to be doing a massive video essay on the game Valkyria Chronicles, so you don't want to miss it. In the meantime, if you're interested in watching more of my content, then click here to check out a video I made about what would happen if zombies invaded the world of The Witcher 3, or click here to check out my video essay on video game Hunger Wars, which also contains a section about Kingdom Come Deliverance, so you really might enjoy that. Thanks guys.